All right, so you know that feeling when it's like the beginning of a new month or even just a new week, and you kind of tell yourself, okay, this time I'm going to actually make that change.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's finally sticking to that workout routine you've been meaning to start, or maybe cutting back on something, or like learning a new skill.
Hmm.
Take a second to think about that. Like, what's something you've wanted to really make stick? Like, make it a habit.
Yeah.
And it's tough, right? Like those intentions, sometimes they just don't translate into those like long-lasting habits.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that gap between what we want to do and what we actually end up doing, it's something we all deal with. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times it's not even like a lack of willpower, but just like a misunderstanding of how habits really work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's precisely what we're diving deep into today. We're going to explore all those ideas laid out in Atomic Habits.
Right.
So think of this as your guide to understanding how habits form, like literally the engine of how it all works.
Yeah.
How all those tiny things, those like seemingly insignificant actions add up to these big results we see in our lives.
Hmm.
And, both for better and for worse.
Yeah. I think the core of the book really hinges on this idea of atomic habits. These tiny changes that you make, they're incremental.
Right.
And it might seem kind of counterintuitive that something so small could have a huge impact, but think of it this way. Imagine an airplane taking off,
Mm.
right? If the pilot adjusts the heading just a little bit, like just a few degrees, I mean, something you probably wouldn't even notice in the moment,
Right.
that small change in the trajectory can lead to the plane landing hundreds of miles away from where it was supposed to go.
Wow. Yeah.
Our habits are kind of like that. They're like that subtle course correction in our lives.
That's a really good point. And like the power of it, it really comes from this compounding effect, right?
Yeah.
Like think about it mathematically. If you just improve by 1% every single day in some area, by the end of a year, you're not just 365% better, you're like nearly 38 times better.
Shape.
And then flip the coin, right?
Yeah.
A 1% decline every day.
Yeah.
That leads to almost zero.
Right.
And it's like our habits are constantly working. They're either building us up or they're chipping away at our progress.
Yeah.
And often in ways that we don't even recognize immediately.
And it's so important to recognize that, growth is not always a straight line up.
Yeah, that's it.
There's what Claire calls the valley of disappointment, where you're putting in the effort, you're making these changes, but you're not seeing the results yet.
Right.
Yeah, and it can feel like you're just stuck.
It can, yeah.
But that's actually a really crucial phase
Okay.
because it's in that phase that the seeds of your habits are being planted beneath the surface.
Interesting.
So it requires patience,
Oh, for sure.
You have to have trust in the process
Hmm.
and just understanding that, compounding takes time. It takes time for those results to show.
Yeah.
Think about planting a bamboo seed. You water it for years, you don't see anything. And then all of a sudden it shoots up like insanely fast.
That's a great analogy. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And it highlights this key shift in perspective that Atomic Habits really encourages, right? Like it's moving away from just like purely focusing on goals.
Right.
And instead you're building systems, right? We're always told, set these big ambitious goals, whether it's like losing a certain amount of weight, starting a business, writing a book, whatever.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
Yeah. And I mean, the argument here, the point is, if you completely ignored your goals, right, and just purely focused on your systems,
Yeah.
on the daily and weekly processes that you have in place, you'd be way more likely to achieve what you want anyway.
I see. Yeah.
And it's like, think about it. Successful people, unsuccessful people, they often share the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
What actually sets them apart, it's not the goal itself.
Right.
It's the systems they have in place to get there.
Yeah.
Plus, like achieving a goal, it's just this moment in time is fleeting,
Right.
What happens after you hit that milestone? Often, motivation drops off.
Mm-hmm.
And like those old habits, they creep right back in.
For sure.
Goals, they can create this all or nothing mentality.
Yeah.
If you haven't reached the ultimate outcome, you feel like a failure, even if you've made progress.
It's true. Yeah.
So the question to really think about for yourself is this. If you totally let go of those rigid goals for a minute and just focused on putting the right systems in place, would you still be moving in the right direction?
Yeah.
And the framework that Atomic Habits lays out, it suggests that the answer is a resounding yes.
It does, yeah.
Because it's those small, consistent routines, the behaviors that add up over time that really drive that lasting change. It's like atoms are the building blocks of everything around us.
Yeah.
Atomic habits, those are the small, essential units that build those amazing results in our lives.
Right, and the book actually breaks down behavior change into 3 separate layers.
Okay.
The outermost layer is changing your outcomes, the results that you want.
Like losing weight, getting a promotion.
Exactly, things like that. And then the next layer in is changing your process.
Okay.
So that's the specific habits and systems that you're putting into place. So like going to the gym 3 times a week.
Okay.
Or like setting aside time to focus on work.
Gotcha.
But then the deepest layer, the one that's like the most powerful, that's changing your identity.
Okay. Who you believe you are.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Most of us, we focus on those outcomes, right?
Yeah, the surface level stuff.
But like the real magic happens when you shift your sense of self, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just about wanting to learn to play the guitar.
Right.
It's about seeing yourself as a musician.
Exactly.
It's not just about wanting to run a marathon. It's about seeing yourself as a runner.
Yeah, yeah.
And when your desired outcome, it gets tied to your identity.
Yeah.
Then your actions, they naturally align with that vision.
Right.
Every time you choose a healthy meal, you're reinforcing that identity of someone who values their health. Each time you sit down and write, you're strengthening that identity as a writer.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is powerful stuff.
And these habits, whether they're good for us or they're holding us back, they're all shaped and reinforced by something called the habit loop.
Okay, the habit loop.
Yeah. Cue, craving, response, and reward.
All right, break that down.
So it's a continuous cycle, right? A cue in your environment triggers a craving, which motivates a response, and then that response leads to a reward, which then reinforces the association between the cue and the craving.
Okay, I'm following so far.
So just think about it practically. Let's say you're at home and you hear your phone notification.
Okay.
That's the cue. Immediately, you feel like you want to check it, right? That's the craving.
Yeah.
You pick up your phone and you start scrolling through social media.
Right, the response.
Right, exactly. And the reward is that feeling of connection or that distraction, even if it's just for a moment.
Right.
And so over time, that reward, it strengthens the link between that sound and the craving to check your phone.
So it gets more and more automatic.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what about like at work? Like consider a less obvious example.
Sure.
So you're at work and you feel that like dip in energy or a moment of boredom.
Yeah, that's the cue.
Okay.
That feeling, it creates a craving for like a break, something to distract you.
Right.
So your response might be to open up a news website.
Okay.
Or chat with a coworker. And the temporary reward is that little break from work.
Right.
The more you repeat this loop, the more automatic it becomes.
Okay. So the big question then, it becomes, how do we make the habit loop work for us?
Right.
Like, how do we build the good habits, the ones we want, and break free from the ones that are holding us back?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
It is. And Atomic Habits gives us this framework to work with, built on the 4 laws of behavior change.
Right, exactly. And each law addresses one part of the habit loop.
So let's dive into that first law. Make it obvious.
Right. So, so many of the habits we do every day, they're just on autopilot. We don't even think about them. So if you want to change those patterns, the first thing you have to do is be aware of them.
Be aware of them, yeah.
Yeah. And Clear has this great exercise. He called it the habit scorecard.
Okay.
So for like a day or two, you just write down every single thing you do from when you wake up to when you go to sleep.
Okay.
And then you go through that list and you categorize each behavior.
How do you categorize them?
Positive, negative, or neutral, based on whether it's helping you become the person you want to be.
Oh, I see.
And the important part here is to do it without judging yourself. You're just gathering data on your habits.
Just observing.
Exactly. And, Carl Jung said this great thing. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate.
Wow.
And the habit scorecard, it's like a tool to bring those habits into your awareness.
Right, into the light. So then once you have that awareness, what's the next step?
Well, you need to be really specific about the habits you want to create.
Okay.
Because vagueness, it just gets in the way.
Yeah.
Saying, I want to exercise more is a great start, but it doesn't really tell you what to do.
It doesn't. It's too vague.
Right. So Clear has this really simple but effective formula. I will behavior at time in location.
Okay, like a template.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of just saying, I want to exercise more, you'd say, I will go for a 30-minute walk at 7 a.m. in the park by my house.
Okay, so super specific.
Yeah, much better.
So how do we build new habits on top of the ones we already have?
Well, Clear talks about this idea of habit stacking.
Okay, I've heard of that.
So the formula is, after current habit, I will new habit.
Okay.
So for example, after I brush my teeth in the morning, I will do 10 push-ups.
Okay.
You anchor the new habit to something you already do without fail.
Like making coffee.
Exactly, or getting dressed.
Yeah.
You can even chain a bunch of these together to create this whole routine of good habits.
Interesting.
Now, and this is really important, we tend to focus on willpower and motivation when we're trying to build habits.
Right.
But Clear argues that our environment actually plays a way bigger role than we think.
Oh, the environment.
Yeah, he says, environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior.
Okay.
So it's tough to stick to good habits if you're surrounded by cues for bad ones.
So it's like setting yourself up for failure almost.
Yeah, in a way.
So how do we like design our environment to make it work for us?
Well, you want to make cues for good habits obvious and easy to access.
Okay.
And then you want to make the cues for bad habits invisible.
Okay, so like concretely, what does that look like?
So let's say you want to drink more water.
Okay, that's a good one.
Keep a water bottle on your desk right where you can see it.
Okay.
If you want to read more, leave a book open on your coffee table.
Oh, I see.
Clear says context is the cue.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the objects themselves, but the associations we have with them, with those places.
Right, like your living room might be your reading zone, but for someone else, it's their TV zone.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And this leads to something called the one space, one use principle.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that.
It's the idea that you try to have specific spots in your home or at work for specific activities.
Okay.
So you have a designated reading nook or a spot where you work.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And when you're trying to break a bad habit, making the cue invisible can be really effective.
Okay, like putting your phone in a drawer.
Exactly. If you want to stop scrolling so much,
Right.
put it away when you need to focus. Or if you're trying to eat healthy, get the junk food out of the house.
Makes sense. Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And that brings us to the second law. Make it attractive.
Okay, make it attractive. I like that.
We are way more likely to do something again if we think we're going to get a positive reward.
Right, that makes sense.
And the key player here is dopamine.
Dopamine. Oh, yeah, the pleasure chemical.
Right, but it's not just about pleasure. It's about motivation and craving.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is dopamine levels actually spike not just when we get the reward, but in anticipation of it.
Oh, in anticipation.
Yeah, so think about the excitement before a vacation. Sometimes planning it is more fun than the actual trip.
That's true, yeah.
And this applies to our habits, too.
Okay.
Someone who's struggling with addiction, they get this surge of dopamine just from seeing the things associated with their addiction.
Oh, wow, even before they actually use it.
Yeah, it's the anticipation of the reward that drives these behaviors.
So then how do we use that to our advantage?
Well, Clear has this technique called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. What's that?
You link an action you need to do with something you want to do.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
For example, you only let yourself watch your favorite show while you're working out.
Oh, I see.
So you're bundling the need to exercise with the want to watch TV.
Sneaky. I like it.
It's based on this thing called Premack's principle.
Okay.
Basically, things you're more likely to do can reinforce things you're less likely to do.
Okay, interesting.
Another big influence on what we find attractive is our social environment.
Oh, yeah, other people.
Right. As humans, we're always influenced by the people around us.
That's true.
So joining a group where your desired habit is normal can make it more appealing.
Okay.
If you want to run, join a running club.
Okay.
If you want to read, join a book club.
Makes sense.
It gives you that social connection and accountability.
Yeah, it keeps you on track.
Right. And Clear also dives into these primal motivators.
Primal motivators, what are those?
Those are the basic human desires that drive a lot of our cravings.
Okay, give me some examples.
Things like saving energy, getting food and water, finding love and connection,
Okay.
gaining social acceptance, reducing uncertainty, achieving status.
Right.
Like those cravings we have to check social media or eat junk food, those are often just modern versions of these older drives.
Oh, interesting. So we're not as different from our ancestors as we like to think.
Yeah, I guess not.
So how do we reprogram our brains to like actually enjoy the hard habits?
Well, you can consciously highlight their benefits.
Okay, so instead of focusing on how hard the workout is, you think about the health benefits.
Exactly. Instead of seeing cleaning as a chore, focus on the peaceful feeling you get in a clean room.
Okay.
Instead of feeling deprived when you save money, focus on the financial freedom it'll give you.
I see. So it's all about reframing.
Exactly. And then to break a bad habit, you want to make it unattractive.
Okay.
Focus on the negative consequences.
Right.
So remind yourself how bad you feel after eating junk food.
Or how much time you waste on social media.
Exactly.
So on to the third law, right? Make it easy.
Yes, make it easy. And Clear says that when it comes to building habits, repetition is way more important than how much time you spend on it at first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every time you repeat an action, those connections in your brain get stronger and more efficient.
Okay.
So when you're starting a new habit, focus on making it easy to do consistently.
Okay. And this leads into the law of least effort, right?
Exactly.
You naturally go for the easiest option.
Right. So the more friction there is with a good habit, the less likely you are to stick with it.
Right. Like if your gym is far away and has inconvenient hours, you're probably not going to go.
Exactly. But if you have weights at home, you're way more likely to work out.
Makes sense.
The key is to design your life so good habits are easy and effortless.
Yeah. Remove the obstacles.
Exactly. And one way to do that is by priming the environment.
Priming the environment.
Yeah, it means preparing your surroundings to make it easier to do the things you want to do.
Okay. Like setting out your workout clothes the night before.
Exactly. Or chopping veggies for breakfast in advance.
I see. So you're basically removing any excuse.
Right. You're making it super easy to follow through.
Okay. So then there's the 2-minute rule.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one.
Tell me about that.
When you're starting a new habit, scale it down to something that takes less than 2 minutes.
Okay.
So if you want to run a marathon, the 2-minute version is just putting on your shoes.
Oh, I see.
If you want to read more books, it's just reading one page.
Okay. So the goal is to make it so easy that you can't say no.
Exactly. And then once you've started, you're more likely to keep going.
Yeah, because you've already broken the inertia,
Right. And you're just focusing on building the routine.
not on the huge end goal.
Exactly. And just like you want to make good habits easy, you want to make bad habits hard.
Right. Add friction.
Right. If you want to watch less TV, unplug it after each use and hide the remote.
Okay. Make it harder to do.
Yeah. If you overspend online, delete your saved credit card info.
I see. So you're making those unwanted behaviors way less convenient.
Right. And that brings us to the final law. Make it satisfying.
Okay. Make it satisfying. I like where this is going.
Clear says that things we get rewarded for immediately, we do again, and things we get punished for immediately, we avoid.
That makes sense.
So this law is all about making sure that you feel good when you do a good habit.
Okay. So you're more likely to keep doing it.
Exactly. But the challenge is that good habits often have delayed gratification.
Right. Like you don't see the results right away.
Right. Like eating a donut feels good now.
Yeah. Instant gratification.
But the health consequences, they come later.
Yeah. And it's the opposite for good habits.
Yeah.
Like exercise is hard now, but the benefits come later.
Exactly. So
Oh.
we need to find ways to make good habits feel good now and bad habits feel bad now.
Okay. How do we do that?
Well, Clear says it's important to feel successful even in small ways.
Okay. Small wins.
Exactly. Those small wins reinforce the habit loop.
Right.
That's where things like habit trackers can be useful.
Okay. Like checking off boxes.
Yeah, or moving physical objects like paper clips or marbles.
I see. So you can visualize your progress.
Yeah, you see that tangible evidence and it gives you positive feedback.
Makes sense. So what about when you mess up? Like you miss a day, it happens.
Well, the key is to recover quickly and avoid breaking the chain.
Oh, the chain.
Yeah, missing one day is fine, but missing 2 days in a row, that's when things can start to unravel.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
you got to get back on track right away.
Right, and even on a bad day, just do a little bit of the habit.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes of your planned workout is better than nothing.
Okay. Minimum effort.
Yeah, and to make bad habits less satisfying, use accountability.
Okay. Like tell someone your goals.
Yeah, have an accountability partner, someone who checks in on you,
Okay.
so you're less likely to break your commitments.
Right. Because you don't want to let them down.
Right, and you can even make a habit contract.
Okay. What's a habit contract?
It's just a formal agreement, written or verbal, where you lay out your habit and the consequences for breaking it.
Oh, interesting. So like a self-imposed punishment?
Yeah, something like that.
All right. So bringing it all together, we've got the 4 laws of behavior change. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying.
Right, and those give you a practical way to understand and change your habits.
Both the good and the bad.
Exactly.
And the big takeaway here is the power of those small actions, those atomic habits.
Right, they're the key.
It's about making those tiny changes consistently, day after day.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it's about becoming the person you want to be.
That's the goal.
So think about what we've talked about today and pick one small habit you can implement right now.
Yeah, just one.
Think about the identity you want to build.
Mm-hmm.
What small action, even just something that takes 2 minutes, can you do today that will move you in that direction?
It's a powerful question to ask yourself.
It is a powerful question.
Mhm.